I am so delighted to have on the podcast today Harold Lee and Brent Wheelbarger, the co-founders of Kidvation Global, a nonprofit organization that was founded in the fall of 2022, focused on youth empowerment, entrepreneurship, and equipping young people ages 8 to 18 to create innovative solutions to big societal problems. They've reached over 2,500 young people in just the past couple of years, with hundreds more that will be met in 2025. So, Harold and Brent, welcome to the Liberated podcast.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Thank you.
having us.
Thanks for having us.
And I'm also delighted to have my colleague at the Foundation for Economic Education, Nasia Israel, here with us as well. Nasia recently wrote a feature article at fee.org talking all about Kidvation Global and especially emphasizing your work now in the space of unconventional education. When you launched Kidvation Global, you were focused mostly on young people learning in traditional schools and then discovered this whole world of non-traditional education, micro schools and homeschool collaboratives and learning pods, all kinds of creative schooling options that are sprouting across the US and you started thinking about ways that you could serve those students as well. So excited to have Nasia here to talk a little bit more about her article and some of the conversation that she had with you previously in creating that article. And so, Nasia, why don't we just start with you and kick us off with this conversation today?
Yeah, so excited to have the co-founders from Kidvation here. A couple of weeks ago, I did an article about Kidvation and how you have transitioned from just working within public and traditional education to also working in micro schools and homeschool co-ops and hybrid co-ops and all of these different unconventional education models. And it's just been really fascinating to see. We met at a education entrepreneurship conference earlier this year, which was really cool, where we first learned about Kidvation, and it was kind of the way that education entrepreneurs in the Virginia area, especially, were able to hear a lot about your work. And so I've been deeply fascinated in just following the trajectory of Kidvation from here on out, especially since being a youth entrepreneur, it's been so empowering and really awesome to see the work Kidvation is doing to raise the next generation of youth entrepreneurs. So I definitely wanted to ask a couple of questions just to kind of get things going and have a little bit of a conversation, kind of taking ideas from the article that we did together, and also just some new concepts so people can really get familiar with Kidvation and what y'all do and plans for the future. So first, can y'all give us a brief overview of Kidvation's mission and then kind of the backstory of what inspired you to create Kidvation Global in the first place?
Yeah, that's great. And Brent, I'm gonna defer to you, but first, let me say, Nastia, that we just want to thank you for doing that article, Kerry allowing her to do that, because since that article has come out, I mean, we've gotten people just reaching out to us, whether it's micro schools. We actually had a visiting scholar from MIT that reached out to me on LinkedIn that had saw the article, and so now we're trying to kind of link up with him and do some things. So we are so appreciative of the article that you wrote about us in our program, and we don't take that for granted. And so, Brent, I'm gonna let you kind of kick us off, and I'll hop in and piggyback off of you as needed.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how this network connects together and the 6 degrees of separation from MIT. It's kind of neat. But yeah, so Kidvation Global is an innovation program. At its core, we teach what we call the repeatable behaviors of innovative thinkers to young people. And we believe that there are certain things that highly innovative people with significant creative output do. They're repeatable behaviors. They're things that they do over and over, and almost to a fault. You can see these common behaviors among these types of people. And so we decided, let's coalesce those together. Let's teach them to young people, and then let's have them apply them in a real world way. So it's not just conceptual, but it's real. They can go out and do real things that impact the real world right now as kids. And so we developed a curriculum that has pathways. And one of those pathways is youth entrepreneurship, as an example, where they can take these innovative mindsets and apply it to solving a problem through a product in the marketplace. And they will take that product all the way through to prototype. They'll do a kind of like a Shark Tank at the end of the course, although we don't call it that. We call it a dolphin tank, as they are children. So we have dolphins that that judge their presentations, but they do a pitch, just like a VC pitch, to the Dolphins. And then after that, if they are passionate about the product that they've created, and sometimes they get very vested in what they've come up with, the solution they've designed, they can get it out of the classroom and actually put it into the real world through a website that we developed called the Marketplace of Ideas. And it's an e-commerce website for students. And so they can put their products on there, they can sell them. They keep 100% of the profits, and Kidvation even pays for the shipping. And we do this as just a vehicle to get it out of the classroom, get it into the real world. So it's actually having real impact. Another pathway is social activism, where they do the same thing, but rather than a product solving a problem, it's a project or a program, an initiative, something like that. Think the nonprofit route as an example. And so they would then develop that. They have to do the program one time. They pitch it just like they do on entrepreneurship. They can also put their program or their initiative onto the website, the marketplace website. And instead of selling something, they're seeking donations. They're seeking outside funding to help them grow this thing that they developed. And then we have research and development, and that one is conceptual. That one, they will be researching cutting edge research that's going on out there at the university level, at the corporate level, and they will find research that they're interested in. And then they will look for ways to apply it to a problem, and then to conceptually develop a solution using that research to a real world problem. And so in a nutshell, that's basically what we do.
Yeah, so just piggybacking off of that, yeah, I mean, our whole mission is just we believe that youth have a contribution to make to society, and that oftentimes people aren't listening because they're young, and so we just believe that they have what we call a superpower, and it's their imagination. And if they're just if they're taught how to apply it, they can just really do some great things. And so that's like our whole ethos with Kidvation, is that we're just really trying to get youth to be contributors to society right now at a young age. I mean, oftentimes when you're in school, what's the first thing they ask you? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so we're asking kids, what do they want to be now? Like, what do you want to do now? We're giving them the vehicle to do that.
That's amazing. And thank you all so much for that. I did want to ask though, how did this get started? Like, what made you think of this idea and really want to create a nonprofit out of it?
For sure. So myself, Brent, and our other co-founder, Michael, who's not on the call, Michael and I, we both have backgrounds in like nonprofit youth development. I mean, I've been working with youth for well over 20 years, youth development, community engagement, expanded learning programs, things of that nature. And then Brent, his background is basically in innovation and entrepreneurship. And so we were all at different organizations during the year that Kidvation got created, but we would kind of collaborate on some things because we were in the same city and everything. And so we kind of worked in the same kind of circle groups and everything. And so we just began to dream out loud, like, what would it be like if we kind of combined forces and became the Avengers, so to speak, of education. And so out of that, really, Kidvation was born. We just had a dream and a mission to impact students not only in Oklahoma, but across the United States and even internationally. And so we all just took that leap of faith. I mean, literally leap of faith, and just, we left our current positions. We joined forces. We created the nonprofit. And since then, we've just been, just putting our hands to the plow and just trying to impact as many students as we possibly can.
So
Wow.
exciting. I have a lot of questions too, Nasia, but I don't want to interrupt your flow if you have any others that you want to ask at this time.
Yeah, I had two more. One is like, how did you discover the unconventional education microschooling movement, and how has this, if any, changed Kidvation's approach to the development of your offerings at Kidvation, at the development of curriculum, etc.?
For sure. Well, I would
Well,
say
Harold, let me
probably,
take the very
yeah,
first
go
tip
ahead.
of it
Yeah,
and then
for sure.
switch to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I first discovered it because my daughter actually attends a micro school. She is part of an Acton school in Norman, Oklahoma, and we saw, just our own family saw the tremendous change in her when she left a traditional setting and went into a setting where she was more, what she wanted to do, and it was an empowering situation for her, and it made a big impact on me when we started Kidvation. Already we were thinking, okay, there's got to be other schools like this out there. And then Harold.
Yeah. So for me, honestly, Nasi, it was you. It was that conference that opened my eyes to micro schools and hybrid schools and just the entire movement. So it was really that conference that we got to attend in Virginia that really opened my eyes to like all the possibilities of education and not just the traditional sense. So yeah, I mean, I really have you and that conference to thank for some of the connections that we made there at that conference that gave us a springboard to really partner with other micro schools.
Wow.
Maybe you
Yeah, it
can
was
talk
really
a little
cool
bit
to go to
more
that
about that
conference and
conference.
see. Yeah.
Nasia, tell us a little bit more for those who don't know
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
the Innovative Educator Conference in Virginia.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was a brainchild of me and a couple other youth and homeschool moms who realized that there wasn't a lot of education, entrepreneurship centered programming in the Virginia region. And most of the time we had to travel elsewhere in order to go to trainings that dealt with education policy reform or even entrepreneurship. So we created a conference and it is called the Virginia Education Innovation Conference. It'll be second annual coming up in January of next year. And it really focuses on combining the strengths of education reform and policy focus with education entrepreneurship and homeschool education to really show people like the vast variety of complexity within the education movement, especially in unconventional education, and include, public school teachers who want to learn more about the programs that are out there, or corporations that might be interested in partnering with existing schools and programs, and really bringing in people who might not have been familiar or want to connect with more education entrepreneurs just like themselves to get involved in the movement. And it really is just a testament of unconventional education as a whole and how interconnected we really all are in the movement and in the space, where you meet one founder and from there you're able to really
Yep.
connect with so many other
Yep.
founders and
That
schools and
works.
networks that really just completely changes your life.
It does. And Kerry, it was so random too. Like, I think I was just like one of the, like Brent and I were kind of similar. We worked late at night. Like, like if Brent sends an email at midnight, I'm probably going to reply to it at like 12:01. So I was just like doing some work late at night, and I think I just came across the flyer for that event, and I just randomly, like totally randomly, reached out to her, just like, oh hey, if you need any speakers or anything, we'd love to come. And I didn't think she was going to reply, and she's like, oh yeah, we still need speakers. And so that's really how it happened. So it was just so random, but I'm so glad that I sent that email, and we've been connected ever since. And like I said, she really helped us dive into the micro school market for sure.
Oh, great. Um, if I can just ask a quick question here, it sort of makes sense to me. You talked about Brent Acton Academy and some other micro schools that you work with. It makes sense to me that entrepreneurship, education, and sort of the Shark Tank pitch format could work really, really well in some of these emerging school models, many of which have entrepreneurship as sort of a key curriculum priority. But I'm wondering how it works in more of the traditional schools that, of course, you sort of started with and was the initial catalyst for the model. How does it work in those schools, especially where it seems like they are often constrained by their own curriculum constraints, their own boxes that they need to check, their standardized tests that they have to be working toward. So, where do you find that wiggle room to inject this curriculum around innovation and entrepreneurship?
It's a
Right.
it's a tricky question, and without stepping on too many toes, I think what we found, we've done it in lots of different traditional school settings, and some it has worked really well, and some it hasn't. And it's funny because the traditional school settings where it's worked well, you're dealing with people there, whether it be a superintendent or a principal or even just a teacher that has an entrepreneurial mindset. And they have started to recognize that change needs to happen, that the old 20th century model of education is slowly sinking into the tar pit, and they better get with it, and figure out something else. And then we come along and it's often serendipitous. They're like, oh, you guys have this thing that we can implement to help us down this path. And so in a weird kind of way, the traditional schools that are starting to recognize that they've got to behave a little bit more kind of like the micro schools have already been doing and always have done, they're starting to make a move. Now, the traditional schools that are, as you said, are locked into the old ways, that do not want to change, that want the bubble test on Friday and the textbook every other day, like those structures, it's very hard. And when we go into those environments, as Harold will say, sometimes you've got to tap dance, set yourself on fire. I mean, do whatever you can to get them to pay attention to this curriculum that doesn't result in a standardized test at the end of it, and so that can be difficult. And sometimes it's like putting a square peg into a round hole, and you try to force it into those environments, and it just doesn't work very well. So having said that, I would say there are some traditional school environments where you get the right leaders, you get people that really do see a little bit of the future and are willing to experiment, and it works well there. Otherwise, if you're just stuck in the old system, it really is hard.
Well, yeah, and I would say that in many cases, it's the teachers are just as constrained as the students in these traditional environments that they may really want to innovate and include a lot of these creative curriculum ideas, but they have their own pressures and responsibilities from above. So maybe it sounds like the key is to sort of find those entrepreneurs, those teachers and administrators working within the system, trying to innovate as best they can. It sounds like that's where you've had the most success. I don't know if Harold, if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, no, I mean you hit it. I mean that's exactly what it is, and actually that's a part of our training too. So outside of talking about the actual curriculum itself, I mean part of it is like our philosophy as Kidvation, and it really is empowering those teachers and giving them giving them also permission to think and to like step outside the box. So that we build that in as well, because those teachers, especially in the traditional sense, they need that they need that weight lifted off of them to be able to innovate with their students and stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, as far as just working with micro schools though, it really has been seamless. I mean, they are already in education innovators, and so they just get it. And so it's been a seamless, just, process working with them.
So I want to know what some of the highlights from these dolphin tank showcases have been. Do any stand out for you?
Yeah,
Oh gosh,
a lot.
there's so many.
There's a
Uh,
lot. I mean, I guess most recently, because I just mailed out some checks not too long ago. Because as Brent said, I mean, any sales that the students make off of the marketplace once they onboard their product, outside of Stripe taking their fee, they get 100% of the proceeds. So I just mailed out roughly almost a $500 check, I think, to Mercedes, Virginia, in Virginia, Path of Life Learning. She has some students that created a female empowerment t-shirt brand called Support Every Girl. And so once we put those t-shirts on there, I mean, they sold like hotcakes. And so those girls have created like their own Instagram page now to promote their product. But yeah, they sold roughly like $500 worth of t-shirts, and I just mailed them a check. So that kind of stood out to me because that's the biggest check that we've sent out thus far. So it was pretty cool, and it came from a micro school. So yeah.
yeah, I think and that was a micro school. I think the ones that really stand out to me are when students, um, and a lot of times we'll be working with teams before they go present. We'll have a chance to do a Zoom call with the class and let them kind of ask questions and prep before their pitch event. They're always very nervous when they do it, but I just love it when you see young people. There's a picture we actually have from a school that was near Detroit, and it's of a young. He's probably 9, maybe, African American boy, and he was doing the presentation, and he walked up to the judges. They're all like the sharks, the dolphins. They're all lined up on this table, and he literally walked up to them and just talked to them like right down the line, and you could just see them sit up a little straighter and be like, oh, I better, and he looks like he owns the room, and he was so nervous about doing this, and yet he just turned on whenever it was time to do it. And I just love that. I love seeing young people put themselves out there and get themselves to where they are doing something that at first they had a great deal of trepidation about. But once they start going, they're like, oh, I can do this. These people are listening to me. They're taking me seriously. And yeah, this is the real deal. And that's so much fun to see.
So great. Yeah. And Harold, you mentioned Mercedes Grant, the founder of Path of Life Learning in Yorktown, Virginia, who's been on this
Yep.
podcast before.
Yep.
Great to hear that she's been able to team up with Kidvation and
Yeah,
have
she's
such success. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, she's another advocate too. I mean, between her and Nasia, I mean, literally after working with Mercedes, I mean, she's been such an advocate for Kidvation. I mean, she's probably also part of the reason why we've been able to get into other micro schools. I mean, we're working with Dreamers Kingdom in Maryland, Bloom Academy in Florida, Attune Community School in Georgia. I mean, and all of these, connections came from, preceded preceded things from Nasia and Mercedes. So we're eternally grateful to both of them.
So
And I think
exciting.
Mercedes is a great example of the mindset that a micro school owner has, where they have this curriculum now. They're going to maximize it to its fullest potential. They're going to see, what can we really do here? It's not just, hey, let's go through the motions, let's get through this curriculum, let's finish the semester, let's whatever. She is looking at it like an entrepreneur, like, okay, we've got this resource now. How can we really leverage it? And in doing that, leverage our students, help them really experience something more. And she is a fantastic example of that.
So, Nasia, I'll turn over to you in a minute, but just a follow-up question on that, Brent. So how does it work? Do these teachers or micro school leaders, do they get sort of a packaged curriculum from Kidvation? Are they working collaboratively with you? What is the dynamic?
You may take that one, Harold, or do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Okay. So we provided teachers a teacher's guide. Basically, it's like a planning guide that they can use that walks them through the lessons. There's typically 36 lessons if you do the full curriculum. There's 18 lessons if you do the accelerated version. And we created accelerated largely for micro schools, so that if they wanted to get it done in a smaller block of time based on how they typically structure themselves, then they could do that in 9 weeks instead of a semester, or even less if they needed to, and fit into their program. But they get that. They get a learning management system that the students can all onboard to as well. And that's a collaboration zone where students can collaborate with each other on that platform, but they can also see the lessons, take them home. We encourage them to show the lessons to their parents, let their parents see what they're doing and watch the videos and see what they're developing product wise. And so those are the two big things. And then we do a train the trainer, where we actually have a training session with the teachers or the educators in the micro school and walk them through how this whole thing works. Usually our train the trainer also involves a little bit of professional development, in which we talk about the relationship between young people and innovation, and how as an educator you can foster that in the setting of a school. And so they walk them through all of that. They then do Zoom check-ins throughout the year or throughout the curriculum. And so there'll be different points along the way where we'll do a check-in with them on Zoom. On occasion, we've done check-ins with their students, where they may be at a roadblock as far as what kind of product are they going to make. And they're really at a point of decision and they're not quite sure how to do it. And then we'll get on a Zoom call and help them kind of walk through, well, here's how we could make this doable. Here's how you could really make this real and do it right now. And, and that kind of thing. And so sometimes it's a pep talk. Sometimes it's just a little bit of tweaking to help them get it to a place where they could really make their product. We do all those things. And then we try to be a part of the capstone at the end, either on Zoom or in person if we can.
Just so neat. Yeah, Nancy, I'll let you chime in before I continue monopolizing these questions here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had one more question for you all, and I think it ties right into what we've already been talking about, but just curious, what do you think the future of education looks like? I mean, we already know that Kidvation is building curriculum that's going to support the next generation of leaders and researchers and innovators, but how can the world as a whole prepare students through education to be the next leaders and thinkers of the future, and what will that future look like? What are some of your guesses, hunches, and ideas?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I definitely think the future of education, I mean, it has to attack the 4 C's: critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. And so if curriculum, if day-to-day activities aren't aligned to those 21st century work skills, yeah, I mean, it just has to get there. And I mean, luckily you have, entities like micro schools, homeschools, hybrid schools that are already doing that. And so my hope is that, as Brent stated, that it starts to bleed over a whole lot more in the traditional sense and stuff as well. Because yeah, I mean, education, it just really needs to be personalized. Like I even think about myself. I mean, of course, I went the traditional route, traditional public school, college, all the things. But I mean, I just even think about how much further along, even now, I maybe could have been if I would have had the chance to just have my own, learning and things that I really wanted to focus on. So I just hope it gets to that point to where it's more personalized in every facet of education.
I think if you looked at research, and Nasia, you probably are already aware of all this more than we are probably, but students almost have an expectation, especially at the micro school level, but even in traditional schools, that they should have some agency in their education. They should have a little bit of say, a little bit of role in it. And at Kidvation, we're like, well, why don't you just own your education, like literally? You can own the product that you make as a result of your education and sell it and make money, you know, through entrepreneurship. But I think it's true though. I think they really do anticipate having some license and some agency in how they're going to do education. And micro schools are perfectly suited to that. They are set up that way, where students get to have a say. They get to determine so many things about how their day is going to work in a micro school setting. Traditional schools have a ways to go. There's still the bell rang. We got to move to the next class, and now this and now that, and follow the rules, and you know all that. And that's going to change, I think, in the future. I think we're going to see that start to crumble. And even in traditional school settings, they're going to have to start doing things that are more collaborative, that are more student centered, as far as getting them the ability to have an input into how these things are going to work, and shaping their education. And I also think it's going to be more global. I think with technology, we're going to continue to see schools around the world connecting together in ways we've never seen before. We actually applied for a grant for an augmented reality platform that would be able to use a MetaQuest headset, and a student in Oklahoma could be in the same room with a student in, you know, Africa, working on a product together that's been 3D modeled and looks like it's on the table in front of them, you know, together. And I mean, that's pretty cool stuff. And now you're really talking high level, where students are not only having agency in their education, they're connecting with other students around the world to solve actual problems right now. That's pretty cool stuff. And I'm sorry, that didn't happen back in the 80s when I was in school. That would have been like, no way. But today, I think it's becoming real, and it will happen first at the micro school level. That's where we'll see all those things happen first. And then one of these days, it'll eventually make it maybe to traditional education.
So great. I'll just follow on Nasia's question with another high level question as we begin to wrap up, which is, why is entrepreneurship so important? You know, why do you feel like it's so critical to help students and teachers really cultivate an entrepreneurial spirit?
Good question. You guys are coming with the heat. I mean, to me, I think entrepreneurship is important just because, I mean, I believe we were put on this earth to be creators, and contributors and not just consumers. And so I think entrepreneurship allows both students and adults to just really speak into the world and just really create things that can benefit the world. And so I think teaching them at a younger age is highly critical. Because we even use some research about creativity and the relationship to how young people. I mean, I think Nasia knows. I think she was in our in our session when we did the whole George Land study about creativity and stuff in young people. But anyway, we just know that teaching students at a younger age about entrepreneurship and just letting them be free thinkers, I mean, it can benefit them so much more in the world later on. And so that's why I think entrepreneurship is important.
I think it also sets them up better for the world we live in today and the future that we're working towards. The world of the 21st century is not the same as the one of the 20th century. And we kind of joke that the old school model was teach kids to memorize things and then regurgitate it. And nowadays it's like, you know what, Alexa does that just fine. What we need are people that can hear what Alexa's saying and synthesize it and do something with it and determine is it true or not, and then how do we act upon it to do real things. And so that's what the world needs. That's what we're looking for. Well, entrepreneurship is all about that. It's all about, let's take information, let's take the problems that are out there, and let's figure out how to do something about it, and then along the way, they learn everything they would have learned that better if they had been doing a textbook at bubble test, but instead they're physically doing these things, and they figure out the gross in the net, not by having to memorize it for a test at the end of the week, but because they're having to apply it to a product that they've developed and they want it to be successful, and so it behooves them to figure these things out as they're going through. And so, I just think, I just think entrepreneurship is such a great platform because the students own it literally, and it's such a natural incentivizer to get them to learn things in a way that's interesting, and it speaks back to the love of learning because you want to do things, not just because you have to know this for a test.
And how cool is it to be like a 9-year-old and you go to the mail and you have a Kidvation check in the mail waiting on you? Like that's
Ah,
pretty cool. Like, yeah.
so great. So great. So if teachers, founders, learners, MIT researchers, anyone else is interested in learning more about Kidvation, is intrigued by what you're doing, what is the best way for them to learn more?
For sure. Obviously, the website, www.kidvationglobal.com. All social media, well, I say all. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. It's Kidvation Global at all of those. And then also check out kidvationmarket.com. And so that's the marketplace of ideas with all the products and programs and everything on there. And so, we're coming up on that Christmas season. So shameless plug. Yeah, definitely go support a student, with a cool product. There's some pretty cool stuff on there. There's about 70 products or so on there. So go check that website out as well.
So exciting. Well, it's been great to hear the success of Kidvation Global. Excited to follow your progress and see you reach more and more young people in the coming years. I'll put a link to Nasia's fantastic article that describes more about your work in the show notes. And Harold, Brent, and Nasia, thank you so much for being on the LiberatED podcast.
So much, Kerry.
Well, thanks for having us. And not again, we just want to say thank you so much for helping to foster this micro school network that is blossoming across the country, around the world. It's a thing. It is a thing. It is a movement, and we're excited to be a part of it. And thank you for helping to connect us into it.
And yes, and thank y'all for the work that y'all do. It fits perfectly within the movement of unconventional education, and it's just amazing to see a program geared towards youth empowerment, which is something that's very near and dear to my heart as well. So I enjoy the work that y'all do.